Good day and welcome to Tool Thinker. Today we're going to be taking a look at tariff, the trade war that's going on, and how that's impacting small business. Because as you know, Tool Thinker is about advancing business, career, and personal growth. And we really pay attention to small businesses and what's going on out there as it relates to impacting small businesses. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive in something that's very important for all businesses, all countries, all consumers. All of us are affected by the tariff and the trade war that's going on. Today we're going to be focusing on small businesses and how it's really affecting them. So, as you all know, the US has a new administration right now, and they have decided that they're going to be focusing, basically a big part of their strategy is going to be using tariff and trying to reduce income tax for the American people. That is the strategy. And as we look at that, we're not going to be focusing on the politics. We don't focus on politics at Tool Thinker. What we're going to be focusing on how this type of politics right now is impacting the small businesses out there. Thanks again for joining us, and let's just jump into it. So basically what we're showing here is Trump in the 1980s. And a lot of people don't know that Trump has been talking about tariff for a really, really long time. I mean, what we're going to play here is a clip of Trump talking about tariff and trade and how unfair it is to the Americans. And this is from the 1980s that he's been talking about this topic. So he's very passionate about it. So let's just jump into it. I'm just going to play the clip right now of him talking in an interview about tariff and how he feels about it.
The fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. And I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country.
So as you can see there, Trump is talking in the interview and he is very upset with the policy that the US government has in place as it relates to trade, right? And he has a different perspective on tariff, and essentially he has been telling the same story for quite some time. So back in November of 2024, he started the discussion again around tariff. He decided that he was going to go all out with the tariff. And we started to see that taking shape as he went after Mexico and Canada in November of last year, 2024, right? And here you have the economists covering that topic. They're saying that Mexico and Canada braced for Donald Trump's tariff thrashing. In between Canada and the US, likewise Mexico and the US, is billions of dollars that flow across the borders each year. He eventually started to implement these tariffs in 2025, shortly after he took office. I believe at the end of January, but Mexico and Canada were the first countries to receive tariff at 25%. China had already had tariff from his first term. Shortly after the 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, we started to hear talks about Liberation Day. Now, Liberation Day is a much wider implementation of his tariff policy, and this includes a much larger list of countries that he decided that he was going to go after. Now, we're talking about more than 100 countries, and this he was calling reciprocal tariff, meaning that most of these countries were already tariffing his goods that were going across the border. What exactly is a tariff? Here we have an article defining tariff as a duty levied on imports of goods into a country. Now, it's usually expressed in percentage, and the rate typically depends on two things: the country of origin and the type of product being imported. So let's say businesses in America decide that they want to import goods from China. When those goods hit the border, they will have to pay a certain amount of duty in order to get those goods across the border. Following Liberation Day, China decided that they would react, and they also increased their tariff. And then a tit for tat started, and it got to a point where China had a 145% tariff on them, and anything that was being imported into China from the US had a 125% tariff. Now, tariff in the past has been high high, but not this high. This is over and above. And what it really means is an embargo between the two countries, meaning that it's essentially no trade between the two countries. It's one thing when you have a certain percentage, but it's another thing when you are at a point where I can no longer trade with you because, and it's not that I can't trade with you, it's people can no longer buy these goods that I have to offer. And that's exactly what's happening now with China with this exorbitant amount of 145% tariff and vice versa, the 125 going into China. These countries are essentially not trading right now. Now in 2024, US total goods trade with China were an estimated $582.4 billion. And US goods exports to China were $143.5 billion. Between the two countries, you're looking at more than $700 billion in 1 year, right? But of course, if you look at the numbers, you can see that China has a higher estimated amount of goods that are going into the US versus how much is leaving the US and going into China. Of course, the markets didn't take well to this. You have the S&P 500 that fell more than 10% in the first 3 days after Liberation Day. You had cryptocurrencies falling, you had the Nasdaq falling. These kinds of declines you don't see normally. We're talking about declines resembling the 2008 crisis, as well as a decline that you would see in the market at the start of the pandemic in 2020. Apart from the market, the two places that you would expect to see the impact of these tariffs would be at your ports. The other place that you're going to expect to see a fundamental drop in the number of goods would be on the shelves as well. If nothing is hitting your ports, then they won't show up on your shelf. So if you're seeing a 35% drop in goods at the ports, then more than likely you're going to see that kind of drop happening on the shelves as well. We should be concerned about a recession as well. And this is what JP Morgan is saying here. And if you don't know JP Morgan is one of the biggest investment banks in America. They serve millions of customers, predominantly in America, but also at 40 different countries around the world. So we're talking about a mega entity in the banking space. They're saying that the probability of a recession is about 60%, and that's huge. All of these policy changes will affect people, and usually what you have when you have taxes, you have increase in the price of goods. People do not want to spend. People are purchasing a large amount of goods in anticipation of a price increase. And then what you will see following that, you will see a freeze or a gradual slowdown of the consumer purchasing activity. And this is what will lead us into this recession. A lot there to think about. I'm saying all of this just to bring everybody up to date with what's really happening with these tariffs. But essentially, what I really want to talk about today is the impact of all of these tariff and this trade war on small businesses. And here we have an article from Forbes saying that the recession will heavily impact small businesses, which of course is a given. When you have tariff, of course, you're going to have an increase in the price of goods. I mean, a lot of these goods that are being imported into the country is being imported to do business, right? It's not necessarily being imported directly to the consumer. So for small businesses that are importing these goods, they are going to see a huge increase. I mean, they have inventory that's stuck in China that they can't even bring over into the United States because they can't afford to pay these tariffs to get them over. And if they were to afford to bring them over, for them to make a profit, they would have to increase the price of their end product so much that they don't believe that their regular customers would be willing to pay. So, as a small business owner, what does this mean for you? This article essentially covers what you should be expecting as a small business owner and what you should be doing. Small businesses that import and distribute foreign-made goods, they will feel the impact of higher tariffs immediately. You have inventory that you are constantly paying for. You need to pay for those inventory that's in China right now. So immediately you will stop paying for those inventory. Hence, that effect will take place right now. Even if you were to go out there and start to buy a lot of goods to bring into the country, it's still an immediate effect. Companies that are not directly impacted, they will feel the strain of these tariffs. For instance, automobile owners can expect increases in the cost of repairs as foreign-made parts will be taxed. So even if you're not a direct buyer, your business will still be affected by this. So cash flow, you need to pay attention to your cash flow. If it was costing $10, now it's going to cost $20, $25, right? So you're not going to have as much cash flow to be spending anymore. Supply chains will be disrupted. Now, these tariffs are everywhere, and supply chains are very important to a business. In fact, supply chain is a part of your business, right? Because you can't get your goods or your material to do your business unless that is brought to you via supply chain. So supply chain is super important. It's a part of the business. Your business is essentially a supply chain, and supply chains will be affected. They have to watch how much they're spending as well. Something interesting that they brought up here is anti-American sentiment may hurt exporters. Now, this is another one that's very interesting. If you are already manufacturing in the United States, you might also be affected by this. So many people are affected by the administration policies that they will be turned off from purchasing goods from American companies. But how can small business respond to these tariffs? What is the route that you should be taking if your business is largely affected by this tariff? You should be communicating. So you should be talking to your customers. You should be letting them know that, hey, there might be a price increase. If your business is heavily reliant on China, there's a high chance that the price of your product will increase. And you need to be talking to your customers and letting them know that so that they can prepare for this. You might have to change your ingredient in that product. That might happen as well. If you're a restaurant and you purchase ingredients, you might have to change those ingredients to lower your cost. So you need to be talking to your consumers about that as well. It's good for you to be communicating to consumers, because let's say you were purchasing all your ingredients overseas and you were importing them, and now you've decided that I'm going to start purchasing in the US, or I'm going to start purchasing in Canada, or whichever country you're manufacturing in. It might be good to let your consumers know that, because they might be happy to know that you're now using ingredients that are from home. A lot of people might be sentimentally connected to this, and they might be happy to hear that. Now you need to start negotiating. I mean, if you purchase a high volume of a particular material, you might want to start negotiating with your supplier, because you not purchasing from that supplier might be a huge hit for that supplier. So maybe they can give you a better price, or perhaps you can strike a deal to split the difference. You never know, right? You need to be researching. You need to be evaluating your supply chain. You need to find out if you can get better supplier. It's something that you might not have been looking into. Now would definitely be the time for you to look into whether you can get lower prices from new suppliers, whether you can import products and materials without hurting quality. So now would be the time for you to start doing that research and trying to find out where you can cut some costs. You also need to look to see if you might have to scale your business down a bit. I mean, if it makes sense for survival that you have to cut in some areas, maybe some of your full-time staff you want to change over to part-time, maybe some areas of your supply chain you want to reduce a bit, right? Maybe some hiring that you were planning to do, some scaling that you were planning to do, you decide that, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. But in a nutshell, you need to be assessing your business to see where you are, looking at the new environment that you're doing business in, just to see if you if there are some changes or some risk mitigation that you need to do. Capital is another thing that you need to be considering. I mean, if you believe that your business can really absorb this increase in price, you might want to go out there and start looking to see where you can get some low interest loan. If this is the right way for your business to survive, then maybe that's the way that you should be going. But in a nutshell, this article has provided quite a bit of what you should be expecting and also how you should be reacting, right? What you should be doing, the conversations you should be having with your customers. And here we have another article. This article is also looking at the impact, which highlights how important that impact assessment is. I mean, you should be doing risk analysis on your business. You should be looking to see what frameworks can help you with risk analysis. And if you go over Toolthinker has a bunch of framework, which includes the risk matrix framework, which is a framework that you can use to assess the risk on your business. And if you click on this particular video, it's going to be telling you all about the risk matrix and how to use it. So thank you for joining. We're going to try to make more of these videos for you that take a deep dive into issues that are affecting businesses out there, not just small businesses, but entrepreneurs. So until then, keep pushing, stay strong. I'll catch you in the next one.